The NIA operatives had been listening to some of Rascal's rapt descriptions of the prelude to his major adventures that led him to become their commander and Grand Master. They had reconvened in Niihau, Hawaii, his home office that he'd often left so as to be still active in the field, the place where he was meant to be, the place where he was destined to operate from. That much high tech now allowed. They could hardly believe their eyes when they saw the place. No one was in a rush to hear all, for they ever listened and savored the details as they slowly but grandly came forth via this nearly lost art of storytelling. They were not impatient and could wait, but they could feel that some things writ very large were coming. The stuff behind the scenes that never happened, being just beyond the horizon of the recent and ever-building stories by this lone grandmaster of the ninja empire that protected the world's innocence as best they could with their deep determination and ever-present goodness. Rascal was unveiling tales, narratives, anecdotes, reports, accounts, and sagas. The old rascal lit up a cigar as the stories unfolded in the haze of a pipe dream. "Do tell what else was in that Great Pyramid, Frederick," Rascal suggested. "There were 4,000-year-old iron weapons that did not rust, looking as new as the day they were forged. I held glass that bent without breaking. I drank from a vase that poured water without end. I filled an entire tub from it and bathed away all my dirt and dust. A compass needle went around and never stopped. I ate a cake, but I still had it. I saw the starry skies through solid rock walls. I entered a room that had no door. There was light within the room, but no flame or openings. I looked into a grain of sand and saw eternity." Frederick paused, recalling. "Outside, I saw the Sphinx. Its glance was fixed on something else. It was the glance of a being who thinks in centuries and millenniums. I did not exist and could not exist for it was the face of eternity."
Next, after an hour break during which you might go out to see the scenery, we will hear some about a long trek from an escape from a Soviet prison through the mountains and across some ink-black rivers. Come back, friends, to hear of the dark, the light, and the never. We are here, being ever. There are books unwritten and never told. We can listen until we get old. By what muted shore of the dark river did its strand call me forth? We're sure that we'll never hear worse. By what far edge of furrowed forest didst the motherland seek my name? O rascal, through what hazy depth of gloom hast thou tread and threadest? Gather thee round and you shall knowest. We haven't seen old Grandmaster West for 3 years now. We presume that he is enjoying his retirement, but then I read an amazing newspaper headline for which my intelligence has no answer. But the guy is 103 years old. He was your Grandmaster? Yes. He always watched over me in my career in field command. Somehow he gave me some kind of magic. Or was I just one lucky son of a gun? One's outlook can make luck. Yes, some it can. I needed it all in the nuclear crises. Iran? Yes, always Iran, isn't it? They must be some kind of turning point of history. Yes, they are. Our TOE analysis had found that focus point. Who went on that mission? Old West himself, after he promoted me to replace him. He killed the turning point of history that would have done in the world eventually, and then retired for good. The butterflies stood upon the edge of forever fading, yes, and now we are on another better path. I'm in Colombia in South America. Wish you were here, Angel. Seems all the big drug lords are in one place and having a meeting. We may have to crash the party. Hello all, said Pasiona. Our operative Ostino has just contacted us and is planning on crashing the party of certain said drug lords in Colombia. Be on the tarmac at 500 hours. Be dressed for jungle warfare. High risk, pay for all, of course. See you there. You all know where to go now, right? Okay, everyone, the word from Rascal is that we will be having some fun ridding the world of some drug scumlords. That's all, people. Until 0500, everyone have fun. Say goodbye to your families. It may be a long one. Rascal implored, try not to harm the women and children. Also, we will blow up the coke factory and its warehouse nearby on the estate. It will then be snowing as like in a winter blizzard. Try not to be in it or inhale it or let it land on your tongue. Wait until all the people have run out to see the destruction, as they will be wont to do, as if that does anything, and let them stand around out there a while, thinking that nothing else is going to happen. Until all are present, then... Passiona was running back to the main floor of her hideaway, shouting out to her darlings as they stood outside the windows, trying not to look inconspicuous, and at the same time carry on a conversation with their mother. They were terribly upset that after just a few short days of their leafless mother being back, she had to once again take off and disappear into the sunset. Passiona was getting perturbed. After all, her darlings were not little babies anymore. However, she did understand. Life of an agent is always risky, and they all knew that. Passiona shouted out her love to her babies, all grown up, and scurried down the stairs to the secret exit entrance to her home away from home. As she buckled herself into the top-secret vehicle, one that could fly through both sea and air, and could also navigate rough mountain terrain, as well as pass any race car on the streets, there was a thought that was niggling at the back of her brain, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. That more than anything else bothered her, it was things like that that could down an agent in the blink of an eye. Passiona shook it off. Can't let it get to me, she thought, as she raced to the rendezvous point where they would all join as one on this operation. Everyone was excited. The air was quite literally electric with excitement and tension. Rascal walked into the front of the vessel that was going to take them all to the drug-infested Coke Lord's estate, where, unbeknownst to the locals, yeah right, there was a full-fledged underground factory working 24/7, 365 days a year. They produced everything that their banditized brains could conjure, which of course everyone was one buttload of illegal and illicit drugs. Rascal cleared his throat rather loudly. Here we are, comrades, let's load up the ship with weapons and our arses as well.
Rascal laughed and apologized to his friends and employees. They all boarded the vessel, oohing and awing at the wonders of modern technology that was displayed everywhere the eye rested as it roamed about. Everyone got comfy and strapped in, preparation for the G-forces that were about to slam them into their seats. Passiona finally couldn't stand it any longer, and said after some extra loud throat clearing, "Hey everyone, I need your input on some matters pertaining to our mission. Could everyone give me a rundown on what your expected part of the mission is? Just so we're all on the same page here. I also need you all to do a voice record on the panel here beside me for our security entrance program. Without you saying your name into the speaker at the rear door, there will be no staying inside this ship. That will be all. Okay now everyone, when you are ready, please come up to the front and give me your mission blueprints." There was a resonance of straps being latched and safety harnesses being snapped into place. Soon they had arrived over their destination, and under the cover of night they were going to do a jump. 1-2 jump, 1-2 jump, and so on until only Rascal was left. Rascal told the pilot, "Veer left and go down to the coast. We will pick up the special ops agents there." Bang, they were hit. But thanks to the regenerative properties of the special alloy synthetic material derived from the common spider, the repair was quickly and efficiently taken care of. Passiona was down under cover of the vegetation. She and her team were wearing state-of-the-art suits that changed with their surroundings, exactly like that of the chameleon. They had on headgear that had night vision /X-ray /zoom and PC compatible with their thoughts. So when one component was needed, it automatically was in use. They advanced stealthily toward the front of the estate. They had to access the rear entrance to the warehouse to deploy their pins, which when the signal was given would level everything in sight with a sonic pulse. Ostina was now at Passiona's side. They shared an affectionate kiss, and they both saw it at once. Stop. Here was a web of some sort blocking their path. They were almost in. Ostino pulled out his unit, and with several deft movements, the web was gone. They dove in and rolled and slithered out of the direct path of an enemy patrol. They lay motionless. Passiona was sweating, but grinning like a Cheshire cat. This was it. The NIA teams gradually got into position, noting the comings and goings of the enemy patrols, leaving them alone. For now, they being relatively few in number, so they could continue to report to the Lord of Drug Lords, Don Mario, that all was well. Mario had left more than 3,000 deaths in the wake of his push to control the cocaine trade that found its way across the Caribbean Sea. NIA settled in close. It was as if hundreds of monks had walked barefoot, not even breaking a twig or stirring a bird. Rascal laughed and apologized to his friends and employees. They all boarded the vessel, oohing and awing at the wonders of modern technology that was displayed everywhere the eye rested as it roamed about. Everyone got comfy and strapped in, preparation for the G-forces that were about to slam them into their seats. Passiona finally couldn't stand it any longer, and said after some extra loud throat clearing, "Hey everyone, I need your input on some matters pertaining to our mission. Could everyone give me a rundown on what your expected part of the mission is? Just so we're all on the same page here. I also need you all to do a voice record on the panel here beside me for our security entrance program. Without you saying your name into the speaker at the rear door, there will be no staying inside this ship. That will be all. Okay now everyone, when you are ready, please come up to the front and give me your mission blueprints." There was a resonance of straps being latched and safety harnesses being snapped into place. Soon they had arrived over their destination, and under the cover of night they were going to do a jump, 1-2 jump, 1-2 jump, and so on until only Rascal was left. Rascal told the pilot, "Veer left and go down to the coast. We will pick up the special ops agents there." Bang, they were hit. But thanks to the regenerative properties of the special alloy synthetic material derived from the common spider, the repair was quickly and efficiently taken care of. Passiona was down under cover of the vegetation. She and her team were wearing state-of-the-art suits that changed with their surroundings, exactly like that of the chameleon. They had on headgear that had night vision / X-ray / zoom and PC compatible with their thoughts, so when one component was needed, it automatically was in use. They advanced stealthily towards the front of the estate. They had to access the rear entrance to the warehouse to deploy their pins, which when the signal was given would level everything in sight with a sonic pulse. Ostina was now at Passiona's side. They shared an affectionate kiss, and they both saw it at once. Stop. Here was a web of some sort blocking their path. They were almost in. Ostino pulled out his unit, and with several deft movements, the web was gone. They dove in and rolled and slithered out of the direct path of an enemy patrol. They lay motionless. Passiona was sweating, but grinning like a Cheshire cat. This was it. The NIA teams gradually got into position, noting the comings and goings of the enemy patrols, leaving them alone. For now, they being relatively few in number, so they could continue to report to the Lord of Drug Lords, Don Mario, that all was well. Mario had left more than 3,000 deaths in the wake of his push to control the cocaine trade that found its way across the Caribbean Sea. NIA settled in close. It was as if hundreds of monks had walked barefoot, not even breaking a twig or stirring a bird.
They all headed to the vessel that awaited them in camouflage. This vessel had a state-of-the-art skin over it that not only changed to blend with its surroundings, it also was indestructible. When hit, thousands of nanobots set out to repair the hull with a combination of polymer spider silk that was almost impenetrable. They headed to one of their many bases. They were now underground and out of reach of all weapons, missiles, even nuclear. Questa was talking off to the side of the room with Rascal. Rascal began, "I was able to catch most of the action from above, then I followed some of the lights in the dark. Well, the captain gave the signal by shooting Don Mario in the knee, just as the sun sank into the sea, the drug lord actually really hobbling away and taking refuge under a tree. Then all hell broke loose. Yes, almost all were shot in some way. And then what else we'd hoped for began to happen to the rear, as enemy troops came forth out of the jungle, not really their best move. Our forces on the other side of the hill and the helicopter door gunners took care of them. We took some prisoners as samples from various locations. Then we evacuated and you sent out the fake news release. It went well, Rascal commented. After you all and I were long gone, 2 missiles lifted off from an unmanned barge out in the ocean. One missile leveled the entire estate, and the other one circled back and destroyed the barge that never was.
Colombian police captured the country's most powerful drug lord, Daniel Rendon. also known as Don Mario. Rendon is responsible for over 3,000 deaths in his quest to control the cocaine trade on the country's Caribbean coast. The capture takes place on a farm in the northwestern region of Uraba, near the Panamanian border. Rendon is found hiding and is described as cowering and hugging a palm tree. He is wearing a blue and brown t-shirt and gray sweatpants. After the operation, Rendon is flown to Bogota on a Colombian police plane. He is wanted on charges of drug trafficking, murder, and conspiracy. The Colombian authorities had offered a $2.5 million reward for his capture, which will be paid to informants. Rendon is also wanted on drug trafficking charges in the United States. On the plane, he expresses his willingness to collaborate with Colombian and U.S. authorities. The police commander hopes that Rendon's lieutenants will also turn themselves in. Rendon is believed to have controlled an army of 1,000 fighters who fought rival gangs for control of drug routes along Colombia's Caribbean coast. He had declared war against the organization led by demobilized paramilitary chief Diego Don Berna Murillo, who was extradited to the United States on drug charges last year. No additional scenes in this script.
The NIA had discovered the planning headquarters of the latest conspiracy simply by tailing some of its members. Top Secret was given the job of discovering the plans inside their computers and in a way that would provide for a continuing source of information. Someday, an airstrike could take out this entire planning building, but only after all its operatives in the field were dead. Their computer network was only internal, so there was no way to hack in. A member had to physically come to the building to learn or update his part. The director had access to the total plan, continually going over it and updating it. The building was impenetrable. Members not only had brain chip implants, but there were umpteen levels of retina scans and fingerprint identification as one progressed through the more secure levels of the building. It wasn't like Top Secret could gouge out a chip, an eyeball, and cut off a finger off a member, for not only would this arouse suspicion, but she would look mighty silly holding up an eyeball and a fingertip at the various checkpoints. Anyway, there was also the facial recognition. The computers also had several levels of unbreakable passwords, so she couldn't just ask some cleaning maid to take a look. Hypnotizing a member was out of the question as well, the built-in chip preventing it. Nor could she read the computer monitor's radio transmissions as usual from outside of the building, since they used shielding techniques called Tempest on the monitors and even on the building itself. In addition, the new flat panel screens used low voltage and didn't scan images one line at a time. She may have been able to detect the emanations from the keyboard typing, for each key emits a unique radio wave signature when pressed, but the typing consisted of mostly navigational type actions through the database, which, anyway, had been typed in many separated pieces from many planners. Plus, there was the building's emission shielding, so she really needed to see what was in the database at the director's level, not his actual typing, which, even if some few lines were important, would end up in the database anyway.
Nor could she just look in the window somehow, for not only were the backs of the computers always facing the windows, the blinds were usually drawn, and the offices of the director and his important vice presidents were on the 6th floor. So a fake window washer person hanging outside their offices every day surely would not work. Besides, they even had a privacy screen wrapping around their computers to prevent even any accidental view, even from off to the side. So what good would it do anyway to see the backside of a computer, for it reveals nothing? Now, was this a difficult assignment or what? No, it was easy, and she didn't even need any futuristic state-of-the-art million-dollar magical type super surveillance system. Could she use the CIA satellite? No, for it couldn't see through a building very well, and even if it could, a computer monitor would not be horizontal to it, but vertical. Could she kidnap the director? No, for he lived in the building 24/7. Top Secret was ready. To do what? See the back of a computer? No, the front. She would get into the database whenever the director did, for his mere looking at the secret data would give it away. Telepathy? No. Any other kind of weird emissions? Nope. She checked out a $10,000 telescope from the NIA stockroom and rented a space on the 6th floor in the building across the street. She didn't even have to bribe a maid to bend a slat in the director's blinds, for they did not quite reach all the way across, plus sometimes he forgot to close them or left them partway open. His wraparound screen would even increase the brightness of the reflection on the viewer's eyes. However, a not yet invented Mack truck-sized telescope and full computer setup would be required for this kind of eyeball reading, since eyeballs are rarely still for more than a second or two, plus the eye saccades all over the place, and so the complicated deconvolution mathematical functions used by astronomical observatories to remove the blur would not be good enough from this far away. So that technology wouldn't work. It only worked on close-up photos, NIA having used it to see the room reflected that a terrorist was speaking from. Now what? Too bad the director didn't wear glasses, for then she could have focused on those and perhaps recorded and photographed the reflections and simply reversed them. However, they too would have moved around too much, with the head motions plus the glare and the lens thickness playing many tricks. Was this assignment now getting really tough? No, easy. She was just thinking out loud, already knowing the best method and remaining patient for it. In the meanwhile, she would try a new experimental procedure first, just for fun.
As Top Secret sat diligently observing, there was a slight buzz coming towards her. Just a fly? Nope. This was of her own design, her little missionary that could go many places that she could not. She smiled and gave a short whistle. Her little pet was going to go inland on the director. As she gave the pet a little tweak on his instrument panel and gave words of encouragement, the little fly took his leave and buzzed off through the vast maze of air ventilation shafts. It would reach the director in only a few moments. This was it. The fly buzzed around the director, annoying buzzing in and out of his range of vision. Just then the director swatted at it. Mission accomplished. Top Secret focused through the lenses of the fly's eyes. The eyes were microscopic cameras that, as the director swatted at the fly, they had been knocked off of the fly as planned. With the concrete like glue, the microscopic lenses were all over the director's head. Only 3 had made it to a decent position, enough to see the computer screen as the director himself did. The screen grew out of its fuzziness to crystal clarity. They had some of what they needed now. The brilliant solution by Top Secret had tested the feasibility of the electronic spy bug technique. However, as expected, the director went to the restroom to wash his face. The bugs getting scrubbed off, but at least she had a good view of the men's room for a while. Even worse, the director shut his window since the actual bugs of spring were flying all over and looking for lovely flowers to pollinate. But he did leave his blinds up. They did get a bit of info, but that was only the beginning, so Top Secret teleported back with her medium-sized telescope and looked some more. Her real chance would come soon. She knew that someday this place might just get vaporized if their plans were lethal enough. But, as Rascal hinted, then the remnants would just reform somewhere else unknown. At least NIA knew where this place was, and that it was drawing evil to it like a magnet. Any and all arrivals and departures were being tracked and photographed by other NIA members, who then fed the facial images into the Apple Mac computer iPhoto program, which had a facial recognition feature. Top Secret sat patiently waiting, for the director was on his way. She knew she would get it right this time. Aha, there he is, thought Top Secret. She watched as the director moved around getting his folders. He walked to his seat and sat. Now with him out of the telescope's view, Top Secret patiently waited. Not much longer, thought she. The door to the director's inner sanctum opened. In walked the director's personal office assistant, and personal aide for that matter. She walked over and spoke to the director. She gave him his morning tea. It sat steeping as she walked out. Top Secret waited patiently.
Finally, the director poured himself a steaming cup. At last. She focused in on the cup's surface. From there, she sent the signal to Rascal and the information started to flood into the agency's databanks. How perfect, the surface of the teacup reflecting the image of the computer screen. She grinned that Cheshire Cat smile and contacted Quester. Success. Quester relayed the full report, adding to it somewhat from her personal revelations. She had first looked through the telescope for a bigger and better reflection surface, such as a wall clock, a whiteboard, a wine glass, even a silver spoon. Nearly any shiny surface worked, but curved surfaces worked best because they revealed wide swatches of the room, eliminating the need for the peeper to find a lucky and direct sweet spot wherein the reflected screen was visible. However, the director was not going to be drinking wine at work, and there was no clock on the wall. In fact, the wall behind him was empty and was even painted black. Top Secret kept looking around. Nothing. This was supposed to be easy. It would be. Patience, she thought. Several minutes passed like slowly dying worms crawling in molasses in Death Valley. A personal assistant entered the director's office, pouring a cup of tea for him and then placing the teapot back down, where it would likely stay or be replaced to after refills. Top Secret focused on the shiny silver teapot or the teacup, whichever was more useful at the time. Yes, there was his computer screen reflected in it. Top Secret's camera rolled the video and the photos clicked away as well. NIA would reverse and straighten the images. People had to drink. A coffee mug would have worked too, as it did when the director worked late. The plans of evil came rolling in, those tempests in a teapot day by day, via the simple use of a human eye defeating all the conspiracy's high-tech countermeasures. Thousands of years come and gone, they say, ni hao ever yet a forbidden paradise today. Old Rascal, at the edge of forever, sat upon his porch of the temple of the Forbidden City on the Forbidden Isle of Nihao at midnight, looking up into the starry sky, and then thought, what inky void of space shall we now have to cross? Answers. Science discovers the truth everywhere. Religion just makes for bigger questions. Philosophers just sit around in chairs. Evolution explains how we got somewheres. A personal assistant entered the director's office, pouring a cup of tea for him. And then placing the teapot back down, where it would likely stay or be replaced to after refills. Top Secret focused her camera telescope on the shiny silver teapot or the teacup, whichever was more useful at the time. Yes, there was his computer screen reflected in it. Top Secret's camera rolled the video and the photos clicked away as well. DIA would reverse and straighten the images. People had to drink. A coffee mug would have worked too, as it did when the director worked late. The plans of evil came rolling in, those tempests in a teapot, day by day, via the simple use of a human eye defeating all the conspiracy's high-tech countermeasures.
I'm the darkest, said the shadow to the night. No, said midnight, compared to me you're bright. You floodlights, said starless space, stop your fight. The darkest plight is the lack of love's delight. The operatives were again meeting on Nihao, the first evening drawing to a close. The rascal softly spoke. I don't know why I'm still here. What turned out to be my last mission as an operative seemed as to be one that should have taken me to the grave. The three fates had met, Morta choosing the means of my death, Nona, the life-threader, sowing no more, and Decima measuring the length of my life's beginning to the end. I'll tell it tomorrow. They all seemed like they didn't want to leave, but began to get up. Sorry, said Rascal, I hate to leave you all hanging about my Soviet prison escapade, but you see that I am indeed alive, and so you know that the best is yet to come. You can sleep well tonight. They all then heard the deep rumblings of a very large jet landing above the bunker. Rascal smiled. All this time, I never even dared to hope. No one had authorization to land tonight, piped down the air controller. Plus, no one even knows about this place, but our defenses are not firing. He has his own auto-authorization, Rascal answered. Nevertheless, we will not unlock the bunker just yet. If he can enter, then he is a friend. Nor do I yet hear or sense any roar of warning from Bronto above. Out on the airstrip, Bronto let out a cry of joy as a figure deplaned. Ah, added Rascal, now I sense a joy up above. A lantern of light has indeed arrived. Who? A ghost returns? Someone asked. He is not one who walked the earth searching for a good deed, but is a good deed unto himself. For he ferreted out the worst of the bad deeds. They all waited in suspense. There were the clicks of the bunker door unlocking, and then the rustle of someone walking through the dark tunnel, and the tapping of a cane. A voice came out of the darkness. "Rascal, old friend, how might you be?" "Now," said Rascal aloud, "who could it be who only ever called me Rascal? My own code name. Welcome, Grandmaster West." Even before the former #1 West entered the light, they could sense the emanations from his glowing being, the goodness, the courage, and the depth of the care within. Grandmaster West entered, looking very fit, but for a slight limp, like someone only around the age of 70 or so. He gave Rascal a hug, then Trish, #1 East. "Master," said Rascal, "these are our higher-ranking members." "Ah, Rascal, you're the master here now, not me. You all look to be among the finest protectors and butterflies of forever that we have ever known. I have read of your exploits." He then shook hands with all of the operatives and met their gaze, some with tears in their eyes, for they had known or heard of him, but had thought him dead and gone. "How is it, Master," asked Dragon Master General Rascal, "that you even resist time itself, looking younger than ever?"
Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a warrior, strong and brave. With a heart of gold and a spirit untamed, he fought for justice, never seeking fame. Battles and trials, he stood the weak, protecting them, gleamed bright, his armor shone, beacon of hope when darkness was known. With every strike he fought with might, by honor, his purpose in sight. His fears, never backing down, he knew that courage would wear the crown. The of danger he never wavered, determination never faltered or caved. Every victory he brought peace, a hero all. His legend would never cease. Let us remember this warrior's tale of bravery and strength that will never fail. For in our hearts his spirit will reside, symbol of hope, forever by our side. Of the unforgettable tides swept ever on. As time, now hoary with age, hurled forth its ashen change, the charge ever san, pale and colourless, that force born to summon decay so endless, 'gainst nature's world each and every day, time and time again, feeding all upon, in its bloodless, white and waxen way. But the everlasting rose would never fade, its lustre even brightening by the day, ever unsuccumbing to the sickly peaked state, draining drawn the life away. Entropic seas still denude the mountains, yet this enduring flower never-endingly has cast deathly time aside, ceaselessly somehow thriving on to that which was the imperishable, the flame of beauty inextinguishable, forever celebrated as immutable, gaining its perpetual permanence from the undying love of the glorious truth. No one spoke for a while. He was here, the one who had raised the ninja empire to heights unknown, the one who had brought forth Rascal as their new leader, the two of them each saving the world several times over. The intensity of life's wondrous being swelled through the operatives. On this, the night of nights, on the forbidden island of Nihao. "Well," said Rascal Puff, the magic dragon, "perhaps we should indeed continue our tales tonight in honor of our guest. If we become pleasantly weary and tired, then that will only add to the sense of what I felt in my trek through the mountains of the Soviet motherland. You kept me up in those days, Rascal, crossing those ink-black rivers," added Grandmaster West. "While you were the prime candidate to replace me, you were also much too valuable to be running around in the field. I thought to kill two birds with one stone by appointing you, however. Due to some new high tech, I see that you have found a way back into the fields of many stones, doing both of your jobs very well, I must say. My team does it. You are of that team, being both the coach and a player too, Rascal. I heard you recently flew a helicopter up the side of Mount Blanc. Yes, well then. Thank you, Master. I am no one's master now, Rascal, but more like the Lone Ranger. You will always be the master to me. Grandmaster West began Rascal's tale. Rascal's escape pod of the jetpack went up in flames on the roof from the explosion he had to cause at the prison to be able to escape when his plan had to change abruptly. His support team could not then get in place and had to disperse. Rascal was in the middle of nowhere in Russia. A Soviet helicopter had landed nearby. He becomes now the most forlorn and loneliest man on Earth. Rascal thought back, summoning forth the tale of his prison break, the darkness of death lying all around, the threat ever hovering near. Grandmaster West hung his cane on the back of his chair and walked quite normally over to get a drink. Passiona regarded his now perfectly working knee, eyeing it as he returned, his chair next to hers. The Grandmaster whispered, I heard that you too had a knee operation. All is not always as it seems. It's not mind over matter. My injury is feigned. I thought so, for your cane is actually a weapon that would never be confiscated. Our secret.
As Top Secret sat in her 9 zillionth home, away from home, she sighed and smiled into her cup of tea, the simpleness of her last mission's solution to the problem whirling through her mind, whirling like a tempest in a teacup. Reaching for her beloved kitty cat, Perfect, her hip phone started to vibrate. There was a problem. Passiona bounced up, disrupting Perfect rather unceremoniously as she cursed and dashed about getting into her nighttime stealth gear. As she jumped into her craft, she punched the vertical button and soared up, now on her way to the west coast of Vancouver Island. On the other side of the continent, and a bit further down the globe, Quester was in his element. As she silently yet astonishingly zipped through the air, she had a sudden niggling sensation and thought, oh, whoa. Sure enough, the console started to crackle with static. Top Secret, this is... Passiona quickly installed the scramble device. Ostino, I'm reading you at a rate that can't be. Are you there? Is this some kind of a joke? Why, no, it is not, my darling. I have just recently perfected my little toy. Ostino was stunned, but not wanting to let on, replied, Ah, yes, the device Rascal and I had wondered about. Where are you headed? Passiona started to receive a live feed on her computer. It stated, Top Secret, location halt, new vacation, you are needed in Zurich, Ostino to join. Head there at once, we'll discuss further upon arrival. Passiona silently cursed and thought so much for my undetectable channel. She knew without a doubt what this was about, the billions of missing gold bullion. The infamous Tsarist eagle was stamped on the bar of gold that was mysteriously left on the doorstep just this morning. Imagine a whole bar of gold just left there with no note, nothing. The Tsarist eagle was key in identifying the origin of it. There were a few other details that were now falling into place. Passiona shook her head to clear it and exhaled a giant breath. With steely resolve, she squared her shoulders and settled in for the fairly long flight.
As Passiona walked up to the hotel, she kept her instincts on high. She had hidden the vessel on the edge of a field. With its new camo design, it blended in perfectly with the surrounding countryside. She checked in as a reporter in town to do a story on the townspeople and to photograph the area, and then climbed the stairs. When she got to her room, she sank down onto the feather-filled mattress. As she was checking her weapons, there was a tapping on the door that was done in a rhythm that was the code for Ostino. As she opened the door, Buamo, she went careening backwards. Rather than stumbling, she went into a backward somersault. When she came up, she pulled her ankle revolver and took aim and fired. The masked perpetrator went sailing backwards. As she was falling, Passiona lunged for her to stop the noise, for she was going to hit a glass table, and caught the masked gunwoman. She let her down to the floor with a soft thud. Thank God the center had made all their weapons silent. She reached for the mask and pulled it free. No! No! cried Passiona. Quickly she got the cleanup crew online and told them to get here and to send a medic with them. They thought they were going to be bringing in a prisoner with valuable information. They wouldn't find out until quite some time later that the assailant was actually Passiona's long-lost half-sister. Passiona had searched high and low, and with the help of the center's resources, she was sure she would find her. But nothing had turned up until now. Now it made some sense to her because, of course, that's how she avoided being found. The cleanup crew arrived, and with Passiona's instructions to be gentle, and she meant it, they were off. She quickly got her makeup on and dressed. As she went down the stairs, she noticed the bogey, but his attention quickly went back to his paper. Yeah, right. She strode out somewhat awkwardly as the older folk walk. Her wrinkles and the bags under her eyes, along with the varicose veins sewed into her nylons, all made for a great disguise. The hotel had many elderly people booked in. She hailed a cabbie. It was a great disguise for getting a cab, that's for sure. As they started off, she asked the cabbie to just drive. After they had rounded the first bend, she spoke up and said, "I'll pay you 150 euros to lose the tail we have." He said, "You Americans are so much fun." The cabbie was no stranger to driving like a madman, so they careened around corners and finally pulled over and backed into a spot between a barn and a load of hay. They waited. After a half hour passed, she said, "Okay, thank you. Now I need to get to the chateau. Is it around here? The guidebook I have says it's here somewhere, but that's kind of vague." "Lady," said the driver, "sit back and enjoy the view. This ride is on me. I have not had this much fun in years."
They were off. She had to gain entry to the hotel administrator's office. Intel from the center had reported there was valuable information that would help lead to the gold, and also a pleasant surprise to Hitler's infamous Amber Room. "So," said Ostino, "perhaps the director wishes to fund and enlarge his evil empire with Hitler's gold. Perhaps some of it being buried beneath the palace garden reflection that you spied on his teacup. Meanwhile, Bronto watches as some of the butterflies depart Nihao, a minute later flying just south of Waikiki and past Diamond Head." As Passiona arrived at the chateau, she handsomely paid the cabbie and proceeded to the hotel lobby. Graceful chandeliers hung down, sending a glimmering of sparkles over the entranceway. My, me," she exclaimed, "this is more like it." She informed the front desk clerk that she was here on a vacation job to shoot the picturesque scenery of the surrounding areas, and that someone else was arriving. She was just finishing signing the register, and was instructing the bellboys which luggage to carry, and in walks none other than Questa. She went off to her room and in a flash had the bellboy tipped and on his way. She quickly started to apply the facial mask and blue varicose vein nylons to add to her disguise when there came a knock on the door and Ostino's voice saying, "Hello in there." She quickly put on her blouse and skirt, went to the door, and saw through the peephole that it was indeed Ostino. Letting him in, he swept her off of her feet in a smooch and a twirl. "How I've missed you, Passiona." They began talking over their plans after a short interlude. The info said that some of the gold bullion was stashed under the well-known and beautiful gardens in Versailles, France. After they discussed their plans, they thought it best to get a move on. Ostino was to go ahead while Passiona was to stick to her original plans, and afterwards she was to meet Ostino at a predetermined spot in Versailles. Ostino said goodbye and off he went.
Finishing off her makeup as an old lady, Passiona then weaponed up and strode out of the door. As she went down the elevator, her thoughts were whirling around. The facts that Ostino had told her were extremely disturbing. They had to find the gold before their opponents did. She stopped the elevator on the second floor, needing a distraction. Gaining entry to a room, she quietly shut the door behind her. She fiddled with the phone, putting on a redirector so the call she was going to make would come up on the lobby phone's call display as if it were made from her room phone. She hysterically told them she had been attacked by a masked man in black, and that he had climbed out of her window, and that he was still in sight. As the front desk clerk ran to get his manager, Pasiona slipped into the office behind the front counter. She quickly and thoroughly checked the area for the information. Shit, someone was coming. She crouched and waited. 1. She whipped around and silenced the clerk with a quick tap to the larynx and a skull tap too, just for good luck, and began searching again, starting to get frantic when, "Hey, what's that?" An object was sticking out. As she grabbed it and noted that it was a disk, she put it into the computer. Scanning through the files, she found what she was after. She came out from behind and resumed heading towards the door, slowly and just a tad awkwardly. Someone was starting to shout, and not wanting to explain, she split, then dug in her bag, finding her vessel's whistle. She blew into it 4 times and waited. The first sign was the slight warm breeze. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, her ship arrived. She went to the side of the ship, opened a panel, and let it identify herself via her DNA. A door opened, with steps folding out and down. She ran in and punched the close button and took the navigator's seat. In a few moments, she had her coordinates typed in, and off she flew, silently, invisibly, heading to Versailles to meet up with Ostino. Pasiona was now with Ostino and a few newbies. As they sat waiting for the head cheese to arrive, she was checking out the new agents, fresh out of training. Out of the pot and into the fire was just not needed. There was a lady and her sidekick Honcho. Then there was Dwayne, who supposedly had a picture-perfect memory and could fix anything he touched. That left Courtney, fresh-faced, eager, and a kick-ass fighter. There seemed to be something not so right about some of these people.
Everybody snapped to attention as the full colonel strode into the room. Greetings to you all. For you newcomers, I am, as you most likely already know, the colonel. Okay, let's get started. We have some intel that puts $6 billion worth of gold bullion here, reputedly the same gold that Hitler and his cronies stole and stashed at the end of the occupation of France, in one of the worst possible places, I might add, underneath the garden in Versailles. The problem being, folks, is that back when Hitler had his officers bury the gold, this garden was not yet fully established. So we have some handheld burrowing equipment and, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to tunnel under. This will require, of course, a nighttime op, and we will have on site our newest vessel in the entire fleet. This beauty, which I am proud to tell you, was designed and built by our own agent, Pasiona. It has a skin that blends in with any and all surroundings, rendering it invisible. It also has, underneath that skin, a second layer that is composed of millions of nanobots, filled with a mixture of spider silicone polymer which, upon being struck or breached, immediately starts to fill in the hole. It all happens in seconds. This is what you will be going into and out of the site with. Ostino, it is your job to lead this team. All of you in this room will follow Ostino's orders to a T, or you will face instant termination. That will be all, ladies and gentlemen. Good luck. The room was silent until Ostino spoke up. Oh, it that you, Pasiona? You look like you have put on a lot of mileage. You look so old. It's a disguise. Whew, what should we do? I don't know yet. I was making 10,000 posts to another thread. Some enemy agents are already around, eyeing the location and dreaming of the gold. I just woke up. Okay, let's go have breakfast. Over breakfast, Pasiona and Ostino discussed some of the history of the Amber Room. Could you please pass the jelly, dear? Sure, lover dove, here it is. Where do you want it? The Amber Room, whose interior is made completely of amber and gold, was looted by the Nazis from a castle in St. Petersburg, Russia in 1941. Although parts of the Amber Room have resurfaced, the vast majority remains missing. The Amber Room represented a joint effort of German and Russian craftsmen. German soldiers disassembled the Amber Room within 36 hours under the supervision of 2 experts. On the 14th of October 1941, Rittmeister Graf Solms-Laubach commanded the evacuation of 27 crates to Königsberg in East Prussia, for storage and display in the town's castle. Do you want that bacon, honey? No, you can have it if I can have a bite of your sausage. Orders by Hitler given on the 21st of January 1945 and the 24th of January 1945 allowed the movement of possessions. From that day onwards, Albert Speer's administration could move culture goods of priority. Erich Koch was in charge in Königsberg. Eyewitnesses claimed that crates had been sighted at the railway station. They might have been put aboard the Wilhelm Gustloff, which left Guttenhafen, Gdynia, on January 30th and was sunk by a Soviet submarine.
The Amber Room was never seen again, though reports have occasionally surfaced stating that components of the Amber Room survived the war. Indeed, two elements of the room's decoration, but not the amber panels themselves, were eventually rediscovered. There have been numerous conflicting reports and theories, among them that the Amber Room was destroyed by bombing, hidden in a now lost subterranean bunker in Königsberg, buried in mines in the Ora Mountains, or, as said, taken onto a ship or submarine which was sunk by Soviet forces in the Baltic Sea. Many different individuals and groups, including a number of different entities from the government of the Soviet Union, have mounted extensive searches for it at various times since the war without any success. At one point in 1998, two separate teams, one in Germany, the other in Lithuania, announced that they had located the Amber Room, the first in a silver mine, the second buried in a lagoon. Neither produced the Amber Room. However, in 1997, one Italian stone mosaic that was part of a set of 4, which had decorated the Amber Room, did turn up in Western Germany, in the possession of the family of a soldier who had helped pack up the Amber Room. Leonid Ahrenstein said I was one of the last people who saw the Amber Room. A literature expert with the non-governmental Russian Culture Foundation, who was a Red Army lieutenant in charge of a rifle platoon in Königsberg in 1945. The Red Army didn't burn anything, he said. Opening the cavern to get into the chamber could be dangerous because it may contain booby traps. It will have to be secured by explosives experts and engineers. That colonel was a fake. After they loaded up their rental van, they were off. Their aliases had them on their honeymoon, and they were now headed to their next love bungalow. Passiona was busily chatting up a storm, pointing out the local flora and fauna. At least that's what the agents following them thought. Passiona related, "Ostino, honey, it appears we have some unwanted company. Shall we use plan A or plan B?" Ostino looked at his beloved and replied, "Smoke or scream?" "I feel it's time we got down to business," and they in unison said B.
Ostino stepped on the gas and tucked right into the next corner. It was a few moments before their tail even noticed something was amiss. Quickly they worked as a team. Jumping out of the van, they quickly popped a tire, put the working dummy droids into place, and each of them rolled out their dirt bikes, shut the van doors and were off, being careful not to disturb the dirt. Precisely 2 minutes later, their tail came around the bend, and right on cue, the dummy droids started to argue. "Henry, I told you to take that darn corner slower. Now we are going to miss the start of our show, darn you. Jennifer, take it easy. I'll have this changed in a jiffy, providing you shut_up." The agents had a look of incredulous disbelief on their faces. Quickly, they turned the next bend and were gone. The dummy droids then got into the vehicle and, gaining speed, rode off the road into a ravine and landed with a loud explosion. Passiona and Ostino were waiting just over the ridge. They kicked the bikes into gear and headed for the cavern of hidden treasures. "This is no time for romance, Austin dear. We'd better get to work." Tears arrived in Austin's and Passiona's eyes. They let them flow. The entire ninja empire was to be in mourning, worldwide operations stopping, as they could for an hour of silence in respect for the 104-year-old Grandmaster West. At this time, Rascal climbed the highest peak in Nihao, and spread his master's ashes to the four winds. "Rascal," recalled the master's voice, and his own response. "Rascal, old friend, you must protect eternity. You are the guardian of forever now, and you ever stand at the edge of the abyss, warding off the oblivion of evil. Where will I find you after you leave here, master? I will be with you as the wind and will flow as the water, and so you shall know me when you feel the breeze and quench your thirst in the stream."
Ostino and Top Secret were entering their third cavern. They cautiously creeped forwards. The sound of dripping water echoed throughout the cavern. There was a distinct odor inside of the cave. Pasiona was trying to put her finger on the scent. It was familiar, very familiar. Aha! We are not alone in here. The scent was none other than Chanel #5. Up ahead they saw a shimmering light. They were in their specialized camo gear, which rendered them invisible. Ostino took up the lead while Pasiona happily looked at his rear. The light was becoming brighter, but it still had this shimmer to it. As they shared a look at each other, puzzlement was clearly etched on their faces. All of a sudden, coming straight at them, were a couple of barking, frothing black blurs. Quickly, a hand appeared seemingly out of nowhere, and the dogs went for it. Instead of the floating hand being torn to shreds, it opened up, and the dogs quickly gulped the delicious meaty snack off of it. The hand became invisible again. Pasiona and Ostino quickly backed up a few feet as the dogs snorted and sniffed at the ground. Because of their specialized camo gear, they were invisible but not unscentable, so they had the drugged chunks of food inside their suits for moments just like this. They now had a problem. The dogs were visible and might break their cover. Up ahead they heard cursing in German, so they slowed and split up, one on each side of the tunnel. On they went, around a corner, and to their surprise there stood a woman hauling a navy blue steel lockbox that looked heavy. Pasiona and Ostino looked at each other and looked back at the woman. She was grunting while she jerked on the box. It moved only a few inches at a time. Just then she loudly cursed again. She stood up and wiped perspiration off of her face with a handkerchief. The scent of Chanel #5 filled the air. Just as she started towards them, Pasiona and Ostino backed against the sides of the cavern. The mystery lady then hollered out a couple names in German. Puzzled, she called again. She went. She then turned around and came back, and just then Pasiona quickly stepped over to her and pressure pointed until she collapsed. The agents carried her to the cleft they had seen and gently put her down. They went to check out the lockbox. With a simple press of a button, a laser appeared, and the lock on the box was dispatched. Slowly they lifted the lid. Inside were the dull butter-colored bars of gold. The box contained 4. They checked the stamp on the side of the gold bar and saw a bird with outstretched wings. Bingo! They had found some of what they were after. Just then, Pasiona felt a cold, hard object being held against her skull. She figured Ostino must be in the same boat as her. She wondered to herself just how did they find them when they were invisible. Pasiona knew that she had to act, and right now. She reached up behind her and gripped the weapon. At the same moment she stood up, and with the force of her entire being she pulled, lifted over her shoulder and flipped her assailant flat on the ground. As she stomped a little extra hard for good measure, her foot on her assailant's back as she took aim and saw no one else.
She dragged the still unconscious assailant over to the cleft where she sat him down and put a gun to his head and grinned at him while she said, "You and I are going to have a little fun. First of all, who do you work for? How many of you are there? And where the hell is my partner?" Pasiona then noticed a dark stain growing out from his rear and said, "All you have to do is talk, and I'll let you go, unharmed, okay? Okay, I work for her. Name? Francie Oppenheimer. I am the only one with her, and what partner?" Just at that moment, Ostino appeared with an identically clad thug in his grip. Pasiona gave a good swift kick in the ribs to the dude on the floor. Now Pasiona was pissed. "Apparently you seem to take me for an idiot. This friend of yours here, I'm sure he'll be more than happy to oblige me." "I don't think so. This one's mine. Little shit cold-cocked me and nearly got me down. I found out where their little hideaway is. It will serve us nicely, I think, my dear. First let's get the gold and... Wait, how much gold did you find in there? 1 box with 4 gold bullion bars. It's the Nazis' loot. The falcon is stamped on the sides. So what to do with these 3? Passiona whispered something in Ostino's ear, making him smile. The crooks were tied up, and with a phone call was made to the local police. A bar of gold bullion left between them. They were going to be out of the agents' way for quite a while to come. The agents gave a wave to their foes and quickly went back to the correct cavern. They watched the police take away the small-time gangsters and sat down and discussed their options. After the smoke cleared, they headed to a new hotel for the night, where they made many new dreams and traveled right on until morning, following the evening star into its fiery depths. Over coffee, they discussed a plan of action for the day. They figured they would start with the gold bars they had in their possession. They would be sent to the center for evaluation. Their job was to locate the rest, and once they got intel back on who the 2 goons and the mole were, they could figure it out from there, or so they hoped. Ostino, looking over his newspaper at Passiona, happened to notice something odd. He put his paper down and gently nudged Passiona under the table. As she looked at him, he looked behind her and lifted his eyebrows. Trouble had walked in, sheathed in silk and wool. Ostino made a motion with his hands on the table. Passiona understood, weapons at the ready, hidden. The couple approached. Passiona dug in her purse and thought of the oldest trick in the book. Albert, honey, I have to go to the ladies' room. Can you order me some coffee to go? As she got up, she showed Ostino what she had in her palm. Passiona got up, and as she slid out of her seat, she turned to walk and stumbled. Reaching out to steady herself, she grabbed the closest thing, the man in the wool suit, and stuck a microscopic transmitter to his coat. Oh my goodness, excuse me, sir. Passiona strode away to the ladies' room and quickly turned the other way. She waited for a couple minutes, and there Ostino came, the 2 of them taking their leave in the van.
They were on the road for a short time when they noticed their friends were on their tail. So predictable. So, honey, what mode of transportation do we have this time? We have the special gunner gliders. I've been dying to try them out. Ostino sped up. They had to get a sufficient lead in order to stop and get the gliders out. He pulled over. They quickly ran to the back doors, put the ramp down, and rolled out 2 gunners. As soon as they were strapped in, they started up the motors, and straight up they shot. Ostino gave out an exhilarated shout, with Passiona squealing in delight not far from him in the air. Their next job was to gun down their enemy. With their helmets on, Passiona shouted out, "Let me, let me!" Ostino replied, "Okay, but I get the next ones." Passiona spun her glider around and was shocked to see a missile coming straight for her. She swooped to the right and said, "Ostino, missile alert, let's get the bastard." The 2 of them made short work of the enemy. They flew on, and as they were drawing near, Passiona's locator started to beep, and with that she thought, "Oh crap! Ostino, our target from the inn, is still kicking and apparently at our location ahead of us. How did he do that? Magic? No. They are twins? Negatory. Triplets? No siree. Helicopter? Nope. I give up." As they finished up their breakfast, the 2 agents were hunkered over the table, whispering when the shaking started. Passiona's face was a mask of shock and horror, while Ostino quickly whisked her up and towards the doorway. Through the screams and debris dropping around him, Ostino dodged left and right, Passiona right behind him. They burst out the doorway and ran to the van. As Ostino took the wheel, Passiona began to get their gear out from the hidden compartments. As she strapped on the belt, she loaded weapons for them both and equipped Ostino's belt while they were on the fly. The shaking seemed to have stopped, but now their main concern was that of collapsed caverns. Ostino pointed out the window at a house on the hillside, broken in half and squashed as if a big hand had just hit it like a gavel hitting its mark. They pulled off of the main road and drove up the hillside, as far as the vehicle would take them. Coming to a stop, the two of them put on the rest of their gear and went to the back of the van. Passiona pulled out the ramps and locked them into place as Ostino backed out first, one, then two of the giant mosquito-looking machines. Passiona pulled a long zippered bag out of the van, and they each proceeded to lock their ultralight blades into place. They quickly went over their plan of attack. If needed, they were hoping that this lucky turn of events was going to work in their favor. They mounted and started up. After a pre-flight check, they were off. The advantage was going to be short-lived, so they had to reach their destination as quickly as possible. They were in the air, looking a lot like prehistoric mosquitoes with some firepower. They had all of the usual gadgets, plus a few that were brand new. Ostino told Passiona that they were reaching the caverns, but they were going somewhere different this time. As they flew over the site of their last shenanigans, they took note of the enemy. There was one truck and two automobiles. They flew on.
There we are, my dear, the mansion of the Baron Manchuzin. I think we should go down before we get noticed. Ostino, I have the geo-transducer. It'll pick up any entrances that could be hidden. We are going in through the bowels, and I do hope we don't have to smell anything. Sharing a laugh, they stashed their bugs in the bushes. They heard the first of the barking mutts coming at them. They decided to use the stun ray. As they waited, they heard a chopper start up, and then came the dogs. Ostino pointed the ray and squeezed the trigger. Down went #1 and then #2. While Ostino had been dealing with the dogs, Passiona was searching for the underground tunnel with the geo gun. She picked up a reading that showed an opening, but strangely enough, it wasn't there. She then realized why. Ostino, over here. As they both were looking at what she had found, they heard the chopper getting closer. With no time to spare, they quickly moved the manhole cover aside, and flash helmets donned, down they started. Ostino pulled the manhole cover and a clump of sod with it over to the opening, and thunk! It was back in place. It was then that they heard the chopper. Still, through steel, Ostino poked Passiona's arm and motioned down. As they looked, they saw blades going around faster and faster. She looked at Ostino with fright in her eyes. Survival, thought Passiona. We can do this. She quickly reached for Ostino's stun ray and coupled it with her pulse weapon. Then she motioned Ostino to plug his ears. She pointed, jammed a pebble into the trigger to make it stick, and quickly plugged her own ears. As they watched, it seemed the blades were slowing down, but no, they were speeding up. They looked at each other. Passiona had tears in her eyes. The blades were going faster and faster, and then they smelled something burning, like wiring. Yes, they were going to be all right, it seemed. Maybe we should retire to Tahiti again, dear. Do we need this gold? This is really getting dangerous for our health. Ah, Bora Bora. Darling, that sounds absolutely delightful. I can hardly wait until I feel the sand slip betwixt my lower digits. And, come nighttime, I think we shall have our own slice of paradise, feeling the warm breeze ruffle the hairs on our body as we feel our passion soar above and beyond, our heartbeats beating as one with each other and with the universe itself. Love is a beautiful thing. When people fall in love, it is not planned that way. It sort of creeps up on you and sidles in on your heart and soul. For people to question it is only natural. They must wonder what, how. I found myself one day while I was meeting and talking with Ostino. I literally found myself when I found Austin. I felt and feel whole. It shocks some people, while others embrace the love and capture a little slice of heaven within themselves. This, everybody, is love, and is nothing to be ashamed of, or to laugh at, or to scoff at. For those that do or have, that's okay too. I really don't care what others might scoff about. To me, that is a serious waste of time, and I have more important things to do, like love my Ostino.
As the burning smell started to dissipate, the fan blades began to slow down. Ostino led Passiona toward the now halted blades that had almost made chop suey out of them. They stepped through the blades cautiously. Up ahead in the distance was a shimmering light. Passiona spoke up. Ostino, what do you think that is? I don't know, darling. Why don't we sneak up further? The two headed slowly upwards. As they got closer to the shimmering light, they heard voices as well. The agents shared a look, both knowing that stealth was now key to their success. Closer still, Ostino put his hand up and signaled stop. They both realized they were looking through some kind of grating. The shimmering light was a disco ball slowly twirling around and sending the bouncing reflections of light through the grating. It appeared that there was a party in full swing at the Baron's. They stepped back a few paces. "I guess we are in the air conditioning tunnel," says Passiona. Ostino agrees and adds that it most likely was as well an emergency escape tunnel. Passiona says, "Ostino dear, don't you think they are going to realize their air conditioning is down? I think we should hurry and find our way out of here." Ostino agrees, and the two agents head on into a labyrinth of tunnels. To make sure of their own escape route, they had marked the walls with a special ink that was visible only to them with their night vision goggles. She signaled to Ostino to come hither. He. She was pointing through another grating, and well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. There was the Baron Manchusin himself in a very long room, which looked to be a dining hall, but now instead sat bars upon bars of butter-soft gold bullion. The Baron was looking quite pleased with himself. Ostino signaled to Passiona to follow him. They quietly discussed their plan and proceeded onwards. Ostino attached a tube of knockout gas to the outermost point of the grating. They donned their special headgear, helmets and all. She pushed the button and voila, gas was now leaking into the room. The two watched, and after the Baron was asleep, entered the room. The two agents set to work, taking pictures of all of the gold, and the stamps on the sides especially. Ostino was busy inserting homing devices into several gold bars. It was an easy task, as the gold was as soft as modeling clay almost. The two agents heard some voices. They quickly went back into the tunnel and quietly inserted the grating into place once more, and removed the empty gas bomb and clay, and hurried back the way they'd come. They hurried onwards, past the dancing and festivities, on along until they hit the tunnel where the blades were. There was movement. Ostino jumped out and quickly and efficiently dispatched the enemy, most likely a patrol to find out why the conditioning had stopped. They climbed through the blades and out of the tunnel into the night. They were not out of the woods yet, so to speak. As Ostino quietly relayed to mission headquarters what they'd done, Passiona was putting together their flight bugs. She was just finishing with the last blade when they heard trouble arriving. Quickly they jumped aboard, fired up the engines and took to the air. They had to use evasive maneuvers to avoid getting hit by enemy fire, but they made it. Now to reach their safe house.
The Unity was rudely bumped and spilled a martini when the two dashing agents came into the hotel lobby. He welcomed them to the hotel and offered up a game of cards to pass the time. They began playing hearts, a game in which every heart taken counts a point against you, with the Queen of Spades counting 13 against. However, if one could capture all the hearts plus the Queen of Spades, one would gain 26 points, which was called shooting the moon. They each picked 3 bad cards depending on their aims and passed them to another person. The Unity lead a spade, the Jack, since hearts were not yet broken, if void in the lead suit, putting the pressure on those ending up with high spades, who perhaps could not survive several spade leads without the danger of taking the trick with the Queen, or capturing it with the ace or the king. By leading the Jack, the Unity would probably retain the lead if the last to follow didn't safely play the ace or king, and so then he could lead another spade, which would tell everyone that he either had no spade danger himself or had a lot of spades. Thus began the analysis of who might have the Queen, for it wouldn't be good to play the ace or the king ahead of that person. There is a 2-card kitty, 2 cards always being left over from the deal to the 4 players, since the 2 jokers were used as the one of diamonds and the one of clubs, and so whoever took the first point, either a heart or the Queen of Spades, could trade cards into the kitty, exchanging them, improving their hand, the point cards left in the kitty still counting. All of a sudden, Passiona got up so fast she accidentally pulled the tablecloth off. Of course, everything else came with it too. She cursed a blue streak, then noticed all of the eyebrows that had shot up. Stumbling along with her shoe now caught in the trails of the tablecloth, she tries to gently free her foot, She was now red and sweating from the embarrassment. "Excuse me, people, to round out the entertainment, I thought I'd add this." With a sassy little grin, Pasiona spins around and with her back facing her now captivated audience, pulls down her panties and nylons in one fell swoop and bends over. Then, peeking through between her legs at her now stunned audience, says, That's all, folks," and yoinks up her rigging and runs out of the room, laughing and crying at the same time. Pasiona had attempted to win the first round of hearts by literally shooting the moon. However, this, while extremely exciting, did not exactly count for the scoring. The next trick was won by the third player with the ace of spades, perhaps not fearing the drop of the queen since she may have passed it to the right. The last to play dropped the 10. The king was still out there somewhere. She led a low club, perhaps being out of spades or having the queen herself. The card game was being played in Austin's new art gallery, which he had somehow mysteriously funded. The gang inside the art studio began to hear a subtle and eerie clinking of glass. As the sound grew louder, a strange yet familiar voice began to chant, "Warriors, come out to play! Warriors, come out to play I! Warriors, come out to play EA!"
The gallery window was crowded with curious onlookers. Every face was void of emotion. The silence was heavy and thick like syrup. Time seemed to stand still. Austin's art gallery, where the entertainment was taking place, was of course protected. Racecar had somehow hacked into the background sound system with an elaborate subliminal message embedded in the music now playing, which may have been the cause of Pasiona's unusual behavior, she being very sensitive to matters intuitive. At the spontaneous outbreak of kung fu frivolity, protective UHMW shielding had been deployed automatically around all of the artwork. Furthermore, an anti-gravity effect had been built into this structure at enormous cost. And so now all those in attendance found themselves floating erratically while in playful, for the most part, combat. The Unity was clutching his cards, a slight frown on his brow as he wondered if this meant that his winning hand was all for naught. Label Wench had slipped her cards into a zipped pocket of her riding breeches and had grabbed the bottle of Shiraz from the table. Timing was excellent, as the variety she had ordered was using the latest in screw-cap technology, so the wine inside was safe, as long as she kept it away from present company. Austin, anticipating a possible attempt on his art, was wearing some kind of belt that allowed him to make compensatory adjustment for the lack of gravity. He was the only one still in a horizontal position. Meanwhile, Racecar was having a blast with the horse, Caramel, who quite understood that she was unlikely to injure Racecar in the present environment. Caramel, given to teleportation, although not time travel, unless you count the difference between time zones, had a much better understanding of many topics than her mistress. This was no problem as she looked after Label Wench on their journeys, so Racecar was leaping onto Caramel's back, whence Caramel would attempt to be a bucking bronc in freefall. Racecar would eventually fall off, mostly from laughing, and then Caramel would gently bunt her into a wall or ceiling and wriggle herself into position to catch the rebounding Racecar, whence they started all over again. Label Wench had finally found a secure niche to brace herself in and was watching all with mild amusement. She did know enough not to take the cap off the wine bottle until gravity was restored. Meanwhile, Pasiona had heard all the hoots and hollers and was scoping things from beyond the range of the anti-gravity room, waiting to see if Ostino wanted her to deploy the sprinkler system or any other of their many defense mechanisms to cut short this mayhem.
Ostino was thinking that he might have to call Graham for a touch-up to the paint, but otherwise, what the hey? Everyone was having a riot, and all of the excitement might even bring in a few more visitors and prospective art dealers or clients, and perhaps even some Nazi stragglers. Another catalyst for the fun kung fu pandemonium was that Pasiona, having given up shooting the moon with a long but non-runnable club suit, someone was holding back the king, gave it up, and having counted the spades, knew that only the ace was out. It wasn't in the kitty, as she had taken a heart and traded into the kitty, led the queen of spades, knowing it had been captured by some unfortunate person. Race car much enjoyed the silent whisperings of Caramel and with focused determination dropped to the floor. She had learned much from the beautiful friend, all her friends. The train was coming. Vibrations could be felt for some time now. Race car took one last look around. With a flip of her hand sent kisses on the wind to everyone. Fare thee well, dear friends, till we meet again. And she walked out the door. Pasiona was back in her groove and was greatly pleased to see that her newfound friends had a good time when they got together. She was especially pleased to be leading Ostino by his hand, with a coy yet come-hither look on her face, into the room of treasures, filled with gold. Therein, a period of time went by where love was shared, yet can't be written of, lest someone be embarrassed. The partying had been going strong, and so the remnants of the Nazi gold diggers had figured this to be a good time to break into the back room and retrieve their gold. The music that was playing outside for the lunar eclipse gently changed to the song 503 from the Angels and Amp Demons movie, and so now everyone knew that the back room was being raided. The Nazis grabbed the bullion bars that were in plain sight, plus the two from the card table, and then opened the chests with the gold signs on them. The knockout gas escaped and found them. They made it but a few feet, collapsing. The NIA agents swooped back in and carried the woozy ones away for interrogation, the raiders' golden touch having now gone numb. One knocked out Nazi managed to open an eye, but for a few seconds. It was one of the last visions he would never remember. Pasiona took out a remote and flicked a switch, turning off the art projections, which then disappeared. Then she removed the holographic disc, removing the gallery and art furniture. It all never happened. It was never there. Nothing had happened there. Nothing was as it seemed. Pasiona and Ostino retreated to their local and secret hideaway on the sea, in the south of France, performing there a study of materialism and romanticism. Everything seemed real there, they noted, but for some obvious cases of silicone fraud seen in the pool and on the beach. Their room was so unassuming that its entrance was via an unmarked door in the stairwell. The hotel had utilized the space behind the elevator next to the boiler room. Bad guys could not find them there, nor in the town filled with transients, visitors from all over the world. Same with all the workers. They came from afar to work during their summers off from college or whatever. The room even had a little hump and a downslope just inside the door, so even if any bad guys did get in, they would immediately fall down. Pasiona and Ostino were soon off to the depths of the sea of passion.